The heat hits you first, not the flames. The heat. Like someone opened an industrial oven door directly in front of your face, a wall of air so hot it physically pushes you back. You didn't think air could do that. You were wrong. Your skin, which you have never once thought about in your entire life, suddenly becomes the only thing you are aware of. It's tightening, pulling. Every square inch of your body is sending the same signal to your brain, and your brain, which has handled disappointment, heartbreak, and every other indignity life has thrown at it, has absolutely no framework for what it's receiving right now. This is the oldest alarm your nervous system has, firing at maximum volume. And you haven't even touched the fire yet. From the towering inferno to Backdraft to every burning building sequence in every Marvel film released in the last 15 years, Hollywood has been running the same scene on a loop. Hero enters, fire roars, hero exits with soot on the cheekbones. 50 years of bigger budgets, same biological lie. The fire itself is often the last thing that kills you. By the time flames are touching your skin, your body has already been losing 3 separate chemical wars for several minutes. Wars that are invisible, odorless, and started the moment the smoke reached you. Before this video is over, I'll tell you exactly what to do in the first 30 seconds to survive them. Your skin is your largest organ, roughly 20 square feet of it on an average adult, and it is packed with specialized pain receptors called nociceptors. Think of nociceptors as biological tripwires, except instead of going off when you stub your toe, they go off when your tissue is being thermally destroyed. At temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius, 113 Fahrenheit, they activate immediately. The signal goes from your skin to your spinal cord to your brain at 300 feet per second, and your brain interprets it as exactly what it is. Something is destroying you. Stop it now. The outermost layer of your skin is the epidermis, thin, mostly dead cells, with a dense network of nerve endings threaded throughout. When radiant heat hits it, those nerve endings fire all at once. The sensation is a sharp, biting pain that feels like being pressed against a stovetop, except the stovetop covers your entire body and you cannot step back. Your skin reddens. Blood vessels dilate, rushing blood to the surface in a desperate attempt to cool the tissue, which is physiologically sincere and entirely insufficient. Your body then releases inflammatory chemicals, histamine, bradykinin, prostaglandins, that amplify the pain signal. These are meant to help you heal. What they actually do right now is make every nerve ending more sensitive. Your body's first response to being burned is to make it hurt more. Evolution had a lot going on. Within minutes, if the heat persists, you pass into second-degree burns. The epidermis is structurally failing. Fluid pushes up between the skin layers, forming blisters, taut, burning from the inside, like your skin is trying to contain something it no longer can. Now the dermis, the deeper layer, is in the fight. The dermis has more nerve endings, more blood vessels, and all the structures that regulate moisture and immune response. When heat reaches it, the pain doesn't get worse linearly. Survivors describe it as pressure and fire and electricity occupying the same nerve tissue simultaneously. Then, the paradox. If the burning continues, third-degree burns begin. Full-thickness burns, through the epidermis, through the dermis, into the fatty tissue beneath. And the pain stops, not everywhere, not all at once. But in the deepest burn areas, you feel nothing. The nerve endings that were screaming have been thermally destroyed. They no longer exist. The skin there is no longer pliable. It's charred, leathery. And this is not mercy. This is your body losing the infrastructure that generates pain. The areas around the third-degree burns still scream. The centers are silent, a grotesque patchwork of white-hot agony and complete absence, spreading across your body while the burning continues. And while all of that is happening on your skin, you are being poisoned from the inside. And it started before the flames reached you. Fire consumes oxygen and replaces it with combustion products. In a modern house fire, you're not breathing smoke. You are breathing a chemical cocktail that includes carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, aldehydes, phosgene, and over 400 other toxic compounds, depending on what's burning. Your sofa, your carpet, your walls, the synthetic materials in every American home release hydrogen cyanide when they combust. The same polymers and foams that make your house comfortable to live in make it extraordinarily efficient at killing you when it's on fire. Carbon monoxide is the molecule your body trusts more than oxygen. Your hemoglobin, the protein inside your red blood cells that carries oxygen from your lungs to every organ, binds to carbon monoxide with an affinity 200 times greater than its affinity for oxygen. 200 times. When you inhale carbon monoxide, it locks onto your hemoglobin immediately, forming carboxyhemoglobin, and it does not let go. Every molecule of hemoglobin carrying carbon monoxide is a molecule not carrying oxygen. Your blood is circulating, your heart is pumping, everything looks operational from the outside. But your brain, your heart muscle, your kidneys are being quietly starved. The first symptom is a headache, which in a burning building you will attribute to stress, then dizziness, then confusion. At carboxyhemoglobin concentrations above 40%, unconsciousness arrives without announcing itself. One moment you're looking for the exit, then you're not looking for anything. Simultaneously, hydrogen cyanide works through a completely different mechanism. Cyanide disables an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase, which lives inside every cell in your body and powers the final step of cellular respiration, the process by which your cells convert oxygen into usable energy. Cyanide locks this enzyme off. Your cells can no longer use oxygen even if oxygen is present. The oxygen is there. The machinery to process it is broken. It's like a full gas tank with a destroyed engine. Lactic acid floods your bloodstream as your cells switch to a less efficient emergency process. Your blood turns acidic, and every organ that depends on clean energy begins to fail. Smoke inhalation accounts for between 50 and 80% of fire deaths. The flames are not the leading cause of mortality. You are far more likely to be killed by what you breathe than by what touches your skin. Your body is in full emergency mode. Adrenaline doubles your heart rate, which doubles your respiratory rate, which means you're pulling in more toxic air per minute. Blood is diverted from your skin and digestive tract toward your brain and major muscle groups. You are running the most acute fight-or-flight response your nervous system can generate, and it is consuming your physiological reserves at a rate your resting body would need days to replenish. Superheated air, heated to between 300 and 600 degrees Celsius, that's 570 to 1100 Fahrenheit, begins damaging your respiratory tract the moment you inhale it. Your trachea and bronchi, the tubes carrying air to your lungs, are lined with delicate mucous membranes. Hot gas causes these membranes to swell. Edema, meaning fluid accumulating in tissue that shouldn't have it. Your airway narrows from the inside. Each breath becomes mechanically harder. The sensation is breathing through a straw being slowly pinched closed while the air coming through it tries to blister your throat. Your lungs begin filling with fluid as they respond to thermal injury the same way any burned tissue does. Inflammation, fluid, cellular distress. When third-degree burns cover more than 20% of your body, what was a local crisis becomes systemic. Inflammatory cytokines, chemical alarm signals from the damaged tissue, flood your bloodstream and instruct your capillaries, the smallest blood vessels, to become permeable. Fluid inside your vessels leaks into surrounding tissue. Blood pressure falls as circulating volume drops. Your heart accelerates to compensate, but there is less to pump. Your kidneys, which require steady pressure to function, begin to fail. Acute tubular necrosis, the death of the cells lining the kidney's filtration system, begins quietly while every other catastrophe in your body competes for attention. Your brain is receiving insufficient oxygenated blood from two directions simultaneously, the carboxyhemoglobin blocking oxygen delivery, and the falling blood pressure reducing total flow. Confusion arrives not as a thought, but as a gap. You reach for a decision and find empty space. Where's the door? Which direction is down? Things you knew 30 seconds ago are no longer accessible. You fall. And the floor is briefly where the air is slightly better. Smoke rises, and the lowest 2 feet of a burning room hold the last oxygen. Your brainstem, the most primitive region of the brain, keeps your heart pumping and your lungs attempting to breathe, even unconscious. But the brainstem requires oxygen too, and the oxygen is gone. Cardiac arrest follows respiratory failure within minutes. The electrical signals coordinating your heartbeat, generated by a cluster of cells in your heart's right atrium called the sinoatrial node, become irregular as the heart muscle, starved of oxygenated blood, enters arrhythmia. The rhythm that has been running since before you were born breaks down into disorganized electrical noise. The brain, which tolerates approximately 4 minutes without blood flow before irreversible cellular death begins, crosses that threshold. Neurons die at a rate of 1.9 million per minute. The structures that hold your memories, your recognition of faces you love, they go dark in sequence like someone walking through a building turning off the lights room by room. You are dead, not dramatically, quietly on the floor while the fire continues above you. March 25th, 1911, New York City. It is a Saturday afternoon in late spring, and the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of the Ash Building has roughly 600 workers inside. Mostly teenage girls, recent immigrants from Eastern Europe and Italy, earning $15 a week sewing women's blouses for 12 hours a day. The stairwell doors have been locked by the factory owners, Max Blanc and Isaac Harris, who were worried about workers stealing fabric. This decision will kill 146 people in the next 18 minutes. At 4:40 p.m., a fire starts in a rag bin on the 8th floor. The fire hose valve is rusted shut. The firefighters' ladders reach only to the 6th floor. The workers on the 9th floor, where the doors are locked, face exactly the biological sequence above: the carbon monoxide, the cyanide, the superheated air, the burn shock, in a space with no exit. Those trapped at the windows face a different arithmetic: stay and lose consciousness from smoke or jump 9 floors. A United Press reporter named William Shepard happened to be walking through Washington Square below. He called in the story live by telephone while watching it happen. He described learning a new sound, more horrible than description can picture. The sound of a body hitting a stone sidewalk from 9 stories up. He counted 62 of them. The factory owners were charged with manslaughter. They were acquitted. The families who sued received $75 per life. OSHA was founded 60 years later. The locked door is why. Now, you are in a burning building, and the first 30 seconds determine everything before the carbon monoxide has degraded your decision-making enough to make decisions useless. Get low immediately, below 18 inches from the floor. Smoke and toxic gases rise. The lethal concentrations of carbon monoxide and cyanide are near the ceiling. The last survivable air is at the bottom. Crawl. Your dignity will recover. The alternative will not. Cover your airway with any fabric. It doesn't filter carbon monoxide, but it reduces the rate at which you inhale superheated particulate matter. It buys time. Not much. Some. Before opening any door, check it with the back of your hand. If it's hot, fire is on the other side. Do not open it. A closed interior door provides approximately 15 minutes of separation between you and a fully involved fire. 15 minutes is a long time when the other option is immediate. Seal the gap under the door with fabric, stay low, get to a window, and signal intermittently. 3 bangs, pause, 3 bangs, not continuous noise. Rescuers are trained to listen for patterns. If your clothing ignites, stop, drop, and roll. Running fans the combustion. Rolling smothers it. This is the correct physiological response, not a slogan. The smoke detector on your ceiling costs $11. The National Fire Protection Association estimates it reduces your risk of dying in a home fire by 54%. For $11, you cut the probability of this exact sequence in half. Check your batteries and subscribe.